Let's play the opposites game. Kamala, the sharp one. Mike Pence, the gentlemanly one. Opposites of each other? No. A vice president and a candidate who are roughly the opposites of the president and presidential candidate they support. This week, the PPP team evaluates their personality types, along with this week's star player, The Fly. With me today are Don and Ken, and I'm wondering which one of you gentlemen would like to comment on The Fly first.
Well, I'll give you my observation that I did in the pre-show, which was that it's one of the things as an Enneagram 5 that I've become accustomed to is the whole concept of invisibility. And anybody that's an Enneagram 5 pretty much knows that you can be an observer and you can be there, and people almost ignore you unless you like make a big ruckus, which is something that 5s don't do. So you're used to being invisible. Now, this fly went from invisibility to visibility in a split second. It was so amazing. I am 100% convinced that this fly must be an Enneagram 5 and probably also an INTJ.
Well, let's see. Just briefly, I thought the fly totally sucked the energy out of the room. I was watching with a few other people, and it just disrupted the whole proceeding. And I think overall, on both sides, they were pretty much steamrolling the rules. Especially what surprised me was Mike Pence, how he didn't do it in the same way that President Trump did, but he was just completely ignoring the rules and doing so in kind of a droll manner, not quite as assertively as Trump did. And the other thing is he would backdate. He'd go back and he'd answer a question from the last discussion. It was funny how he did it. He didn't really ham it up at all, but pretty much ignored the rules, which I thought was interesting for his type. With Kamala, I think her game has definitely been raised. The bar's been raised. I think she's been getting some really good consulting on eye contact, and yet her visual presentation was incongruent. And what I mean by that is she'd be discussing the pandemic, which is a very serious issue, and then would crack out into a broad smile 10 or 20 seconds after that. So her mannerisms didn't suit the subject, and I didn't find her persona to be credible. But the fly was just incredible. I think I'm not quite sure it was a CGI. I think it was a real fly, but I can't prove it. I don't know how a fly makes its way into a television studio, but I think it might have been, tongue in cheek, I think it might have been payback for the fly, which I think happened to Hillary. Do you remember that from the 2016?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it was payback time. Maybe they kept the same fly. I don't know if they fed it. They kept it alive for 4 years, and okay, let's go time. And then maybe they put some sugar water in Pence's hair mousse or something. I don't know. It'd be pretty easy to get a fly to land on somebody's head because obviously there must have been something in the makeup, in the green room maybe. They put some fly paper in there or something. I don't know what they did. But he didn't know the fly was there. We didn't find the content to be that compelling on either side. I think they were, they're shooting holes in it today, and I don't know what the consensus is as to who won. But I'm actually going to say that I think Kamala had the upper hand, not content-wise, but I think overall in the performance. I think if you compare her performance in the previous debates with this one, there was a definite improvement. I don't know what effect or traction it would have. She made some huge content errors with the Abe Lincoln factual fumble there. But let's get back to the fly. So the the reason it was so funny, I think, and people literally got up and walked up to the screen and crowded around the screen to watch the fly. I mean, the rest of the presentation was not that compelling, I thought. It was a meandering discussion, which almost never focused on the question. And again, it was a 2-against-1. The moderator was very partisan, I thought. And Pence, I think Pence handled it pretty well, but he was Mike Pence. He was just kind of, not that compelling. He had some good comebacks, but here's a problem I have with Pence, and I'll get back to this in a second. But he missed an opportunity. This is just one example where they were talking about China, yet he didn't bring up the knockout punch with, with Hunter Biden in China with the $3 billion in investment custodianship.
Oh, I thought he had a different knockout punch, and I'll cover that later. But go ahead.
Yeah, okay. But he didn't. Okay, what I didn't see out of Pence, and I'll expand upon this later, is that he didn't have the same killer instinct that that you would normally have in a debate. He was just kind of there, and yeah, he had some he landed a few, but to me, I think Kamala was the real tiger there. Now, whether the content holds up under scrutiny is being discussed today, and I think a lot of the things that she did say were factually untrue, yet it doesn't matter because the vast bulk of television viewers are not fact-checking anything, so it's all about the surface impression.
Yeah, I agree, Ken. And I think one of the things that we have to realize when we analyze this whole thing is to put things in context. And what we had after the first debate was the Democrats, or the people on the left that are anti-Trump, they wanted their man or woman in this case to dish it out like Trump did. They wanted to be able to have somebody in the ring that could do that. And I think what you were basically discussing was that desire to have Kamala be that person. Well, I think the strategy from the Republicans was, yeah, let's let her do that, but then let's contrast that with the quiet, dignified, logical demeanor of Mike Pence, and let's see what the overall American people really prefer. And I think Mike Pence and the Trump-Pence ticket came out ahead for that reason, because even though he may have gone on longer in his responses and the moderator had to interrupt him, I'm not 100% sure that it was an actual time thing, because maybe he didn't really, maybe the moderator wanted to interrupt Pence more than the Democrat. I'm not sure. So we needed a watch there. We needed a timer on the screen. We didn't have that. So it's all a bit fuzzy. And, you mentioned that Pence it was an interesting choice of him kind of breaking the rules or making his own rules. But here's my thesis on that. I think he gets away with it, not only to his base, but to those holding the middle ground, few though they may be in this debate and in this election, because of Pence's demeanor. He's obviously somebody that basically, some people are going to quibble with this, but I would say exudes integrity. He's a man that has every hair in place, and this is his Enneagram 1 wing operating. Not one wing, but his Enneagram 1. He will be perceived as being Mr. Integrity. So when you have a fly land on that white hair, whether it was deliberate or not, that, I'm sorry, but psychologically what's happening is his integrity is being attacked. And that may seem silly and superficial, but I think at some kind of a visceral level, that's actually what was happening on television, was an attack on Mr. Integrity there. And who knows whether or not it was successful. At this point, the fly is definitely number 2 in the debate performance. Pence is ranked number 1, the fly second, and Harris came in distant third from what I'm seeing. So got to give credit to Mr. Fly.
Well, I thought Kamala actually did pretty well, and I'm not a fan, but a couple of things that I want to note are how well she was able to tie in some of what could be perceived as the failings of the Trump Pence administration that have occurred due to coronavirus. And I'm not sure if the American people are swayed by that argument, the arguments that she made. But when Joe Biden was on stage, we did not hear him very effectively accuse the president of destroying the economy or doing away with the health care that so many people have a hope in now, with how many people are sick with coronavirus. I thought that Kamala was quite effective in referring to the loss of jobs, the weak economy, and the threat to healthcare. And now I'm not saying that she's right about those things, and I don't believe she is right. But I do want to give her props for, if coronavirus, and I'm the conspiracy theorist of the group, I have my badge I could show you. If there has been a long-standing plot on behalf of the Democrats and the deep state to make President Trump look bad, and coronavirus was a part of that plot, and I'm saying if here, then Kamala brought it all home, because everything that has happened to this country as a result of partly people being infected by the coronavirus, but more directly the shutdowns and the reaction to the coronavirus, she really was able to point to all those things pretty effectively, I thought.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Fly number one, and the reason I say that is I think it's the Fly definitely countered the image of Mike Pence fairly well. I think better than Kamala did. So Fly number one. I think Kamala, I'm going to put her number two. I think just mostly from most improved candidate since certainly since that mix up of the 20 Democratic, the last time she was in a long extended debate performance. And I think we need to mention then Pence, and then but also number four. Let's just give a brief look at Susan Page. I think was the moderator. I thought she was extremely ineffective compared to Chris Wallace, who actually was a participant in the debate, and so was Susan Page. I mean, they were really ganging up on Mike Pence, and he handled it pretty well, as Don said. And but there she was. I mean, I think it's kind of the disappointing thing is that they can't seem to get. I guess in a situation where they've managed to bifurcate the electorate, and I think that's been the whole theme of this election cycle, is to divide the population. It goes back to the Floyd case, where you had pretty much universal skepticism about the arrest, and maybe a desire to let the legal process take that over. And then that became hyperbolically amplified by the video and then the riots and all these other things. So now we've got everybody's on one side or the other. So I don't know if they'd ever find if there is such a thing anymore as a neutral moderator. So, but there she was. And I thought it was overall, it was a very unenlightening experience. When you look at the information that was exchanged and so on, I think Mike Pence probably had the upper hand in content, definitely. But I'm going to go with that Fly. That Fly was definitely sucked all the energy out of the room. And I do think I'm normally not a conspiracy type of oriented person. I'm going to find it very difficult to accept that was an accident. I don't know how it happened, but I just have a feeling that it was intentional. It was just too perfect. White hair, and Mike didn't notice it was there ever. I don't think he found out until later. And there we have it. It was, I think, the most memorable part of the night. I can't remember a single other, you know, string of logical thinking that went on there, except for some of Pence's content was very good, I thought, but not good enough to counter the fly.
Yeah, I want to keep going with that general analysis, and it's not really completely a joke about the fly, but I think there's a dynamic here that if we look below the surface, we definitely see operating with Trump Pence. And I don't know on this show if we've ever really discussed this in the way that I'm just about to, but I think that it is how Pence makes an excellent partner for Trump. Now, if you think about this in Enneagram terms, Trump is a 3 and Pence is a 1. And the 3 is the person that, when you look at their shadows or their downsides, the 3 is the flim-flam man, the used car salesman, everything that the left is trying to portray Trump is, well, that's all real on his downside. Now, my theory as a Trump supporter, full disclosure, is that Trump is overplaying his appearance of the downside in order to draw his political enemies into a trap. Now, whether or not that is what he's doing is kind of beside the point, because what we have happening when Mike Pence lends his 1 energy, which is all about ethics and morality and having every hair in place, so to speak. There really is a look about 1s, that they do have that every hair in place look, and it's how their lives are generally perceived. And it's not just external. One thing about the Enneagram 1 internal dynamic is they are their own worst critics. They will know if something is missing or wrong, and that's actually what made Pence effective in countering some of the, and I'll say some, of the lies that came from the other side, from Harris, and is his ability to spot what's wrong. Now, 1s are always looking at what isn't quite right, what doesn't measure up according to their standard of correctness. So when you put a 1 and a 3 together and they agree on their overall agenda, what happens? If the 1 is in a subordinate position, which Pence definitely is to Trump, then you have the 1 lending their ethical energy to the 3, who is sometimes perceived as the flim-flam man. Now, what does that do? Well, if you're a hardcore leftist, hardcore opposition to Trump, it doesn't really change anything. But for those in the middle, they find themselves subconsciously thinking, if this straight arrow is supporting this man that the opponents are saying is Mr. Used car salesman, then they must be lying. And I don't think that this Mike Pence, Mr. Integrity, would support such a man as the enemies are portraying Trump. And I think that all that, it's not pointed out on the surface, but I think it's happening below the surface subconsciously to a lot of people. And it really is the main thing that Pence brings to the ticket.
Well, let's see, Mike Pence, ISTJ and MBTI. And so we've got a pretty good perceptual engine. We've got the sensing function is a 2nd in the stack. Introverted. Let's see. I'm analyzing this part. No, actually, I reversed that. So TJ, so extroverted thinker, and again, but Mike Pence's strongest function is this introverted sensing function, technically. And which would make the fly, I'd say, boy, that's a tough blow. When introverted sensors are normally very neat dressers and, very well put together physically, with an idealistic sensing function that's substantially expressed. And usually, an extroverted sensor is a slob like me. So you've got this dynamic, and that's why the fly was so effective. It completely just kind of destroyed his image in some ways, and unfortunately, I know it's superficial, and we're kind of leaning on that, but these things do matter. I think they matter in media, which is why I think it was probably intentional. But quickly going over to Kamala, we've got ESTJ. Um, she's definitely raised her level of comfort, in appearing, and her eye contact was very good, and tended to shift between directly at the camera and then slightly to her right, um, so she could pick up her notes. So she was very well put together. I think she was emotionally better. She always looked like, I said this in one of the shows we did a while back, that she always struck me as if one of my neighbors lost her cat and wasn't quite over that, couldn't find the cat and was just kind of trying to conduct life, but was still worrying about the cat. She always seemed to be worrying about something else, Kamala, on stage, and was not doing that. I think she was kind of plowing through it. And she's probably has obviously expert consulting. I think we might agree here that Joe Biden is not the candidate. I hate to say it that way, but he's just not going to make it in 4 years. Based on the cognitive issues that are accelerating, I think, over the last year. And anybody who's worked in this field before, um, with cognitive limitations or seeing them express themselves, can see very clearly what's going on here. And I don't think it deserves comment for a couple reasons. But I think Kamala would become obviously the main feature. So I think we really have to step back and think, okay, this is a presidential candidate that we're viewing, and to view in that context, if she would, how she would pair off with President Trump. And actually, if Joe Biden drops out of the debate, which is possible, it would be interesting to see Donald Trump turn up and debate Kamala Harris. That would be quite a showdown, because Mike Pence, again, is he was very polite, very direct. But I'd say, from just looking at the Republican side of things, I still don't know what happened between Mike Pence and General Flynn. And that's kind of a developing story on the Republican side, is the continuing prosecution. And maybe, Don, if you're specialized in, if you've followed this story more closely than I have, what did happen there? Because I think that many people on the Republican side are supporters of General Flynn, and anyone who was following the story will realize that there was some kind of falling out between Mike Pence and General Flynn. So what happened there exactly?
Well, I'll give you my analysis as such as it is, and I can't claim to be strictly fact oriented. My mind doesn't completely work that way. I'm very much an intuitor, but paying attention to all the little pieces that have fallen out from that encounter, let's call it that, from that time until now, my summary of the whole situation is not that, not necessarily that Mike Pence was in on a plot to falsely implicate General Flynn, or that he was doing it genuinely. I honestly think that President Trump has been playing the long game here and has told those that are potential assets of the deep state, let's call it that, anti-Trumpers, he's allowed them to play out their game. In other words, if somebody did recruit Mike Pence to be a potential replacement for Trump, thinking that due to his long-standing career in politics, there were some hooks, whatever they might be, in his background that would make him a tool of the establishment, then President Trump, hypothetically, would be willing to let Mike Pence play that out, to be able to see not so much what the hooks were potentially were, but how far his political enemies would get in this maneuvering. And I remember very clearly President Trump saying, well, I have to get rid of General Flynn because Mike Pence said he lied. Now, I flat out believe that President Trump was playing a part there, playing a role, not disclosing all of his hands. I believe that he was, as much as it pained him to do so, hanging General Flynn out to dry to allow a feeding frenzy of his political enemies on that red meat to see what would come out of it. And doesn't mean that none of that was real. It's very much real. All of that, the damage to his General Flynn's finances, and blackmail of his son, and all of that. This is the level of dirty political fighting that we're at. But President Trump did not indicate at any step of the way that he was doing that in any way unwillingly, although I believe he was. I believe that he's a consummate actor in that way. As a 3, as an Enneagram 3, President Trump is very much able to play a role. So President Trump took the position of playing the role of rule of law versus personalities, and everybody expected President Trump to play the role of personalities, but he played the role of rule of law. Now, it takes a while for rule of law to play out, and we're beginning to see that there's very little, if any, evidence against General Flynn, and that he will probably be let go fairly soon. Many people expected a while ago. So that's pretty long analysis there, but that's how I see that dynamic playing out. It has a lot to do with, people very much remarked on how President Reagan had a very loose management style. In a way, President Trump's is even more loose. He waits to see how things play out. And I believe he knows how they're going to play out, but he has to let them play out. And that's what's been happening here. I had one more thing that I wanted to add about Kamala and the dynamic that I explained earlier about the 3-1 relationship between Trump and Pence. I believe the enemy strategy has been, as we saw with the fly, been to take down the integrity prop that President Trump has been using. And if Kamala is, and I believe this is correct, and Cindy has a different view, so she's going to weigh in too on Kamala, but I believe that she's a 3, possibly a 2-wing. And if anybody knows a little bit about Enneagram 2 dynamics or 3 dynamics, they know that they can definitely not be above using their people skills in order to get what they want, especially an ambitious 3. So if you have a 3 against 3, a Harris against Trump, what do you have backing up the Harris? And in this case, we're going to remember that even Biden referred to a Harris administration. So I'm going to treat that as probably a Freudian slip, that he knows that he's not going to be ultimately the candidate. Maybe he will be at the election, but not for a very long time. We all kind of see the handwriting on the wall there. But what is Biden? What does Biden bring to Harris's 3? Well, I believe he's bringing the 9 energy, and Ken can probably speak authoritatively to that. But what happens when a 9 backs up a 3? Well, the 9 is famous for being able to see all sides of the picture. So in many ways, a 9 is the opposite of the 1. The 1 is able to really deal with the hardcore facts and is able to say, here's the ground we stand on, and this is why. Whereas a 9 says, well, look at this, well, look at that, look at these people over here, and they deserve our sympathy, and look at these people over here, they deserve our sympathy too. And this 9 energy that I'm describing, it's not only on the Democrat side. Of course, we've had famous 9 presidents like President Reagan who are able to do this the same thing on the political right very effectively. But what happens when you get a 9 and a 3 is that you get 2 candidates, 2 partners that are able to play fast and loose with the truth, and the public can see that subconsciously in the way that I've kind of described the 1 backing up the 3 subconsciously with the general public. That is exactly what doesn't happen with the 9-3 combination. They do the opposite of holding each other accountable. They basically they support each other emotionally by virtue of their good intentions, but they don't actually look at any measurable results. And so I see that dynamic as being basically a miss for the Democrat Party, that they picked this 3-9 combination, which does not help their credibility.
Well, as you mentioned, Don, we don't really fully agree about Kamala's Enneagram type, and you come down along with the personality database general consensus that she's a 3. I see a lot of physicality in her, and I lean toward thinking that she might be an Enneagram 8. And it's interesting, when she refers to her career as a prosecutor, she uses, very, very physical terms like closing the door, she has a physical presence about her. And I had been thinking that. And then this morning I happened to listen to a Sarah Westall interview with Sherry Edwards, and Sherry Edwards was doing some voice print analysis of some of the candidates, and she mentioned Kamala, and what she said about Kamala's voice print was that there are indications that physical power is very important to her, and I certainly that would speak to her being an Enneagram 8, and maybe just a will type, but I think 8 is the most likely there. So we'll have to see how she behaves in different situations. She was so aggressive in the earlier debates where there were more people on the stage. 3s, a lot of times, at least the 3s that I've known in my life, well, President Trump is a 3, yes, and he is aggressive in certain situations. 3s will try to finesse things, from my experience, if they can. And I don't see her using a lot of finesse. I see her, while I could, see some manipulation there, I see her more taking a direct route and, being more openly aggressive, especially, again, referring back to the earlier debates. So I could be wrong. I'm open to being wrong. But then if she were an 8, you would have with her and Joe Biden an 8-9 combination. So, an 8 sometimes can press a 9 to make the difficult decisions, although it's often not a very happy or friendly relationship. But the dynamic would definitely be different if she was an 8.
Yeah, I agree with you, Cindy, and I am not 100% sold on my opinion, and you didn't even mention this, but one of the things that I think that you were also thinking about Kamala not being a 3 or a 2 is that you can sense, and I think as a heart type yourself, a warmth or a heart connection to somebody if they're in that 2, 3, 4 triad, that they're operating out of their heart center, and you don't sense that with Kamala. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. She seems like a cold fish to me. Now, I suppose if a 3 were very, very deceptive, a 3 might come across like that. But I have not met an Enneagram 3 that, as a 2, that I did not like. And I typically, heart types are drawn to heart types. There's just commonality there. And yeah, I definitely do not feel that with her. I have a natural distrust for her, really a kind of a visceral reaction to her, and don't feel any kind of connection with her.
Now, one thing I mentioned earlier in the debate that I wanted to make sure that I got in, because I said I would cover it later, was the kill shot from Mike Pence regarding China. And I can't find the exact quote. I was searching for it, but I'm going to have to paraphrase it, and it's pretty close. Is that when Harris came out trying to diss President Trump for his China trade war, Pence shot back something along the lines of, well, at least he fought a war, or at least he gave some opposition to China's one-sided trade with the United States. And if memory serves, that Kamala Harris had pretty much a blank response to that. And I think that really was a pretty effective kill shot. He didn't. People have kind of gotten tired of the son being used as the foil, and in this case, Pence came out directly against Joe Biden and not Hunter, the corrupt son. So I think that was pretty effective.
Now, one thing, Don, is I did mention that Mike Pence refrained from going after the Hunter Biden interaction with China, which to me was a little odd, because it was so obviously right there. He stopped short of that, and I'm just wondering if that was a signal that Mike Pence is kind of a fence sitter as far as even the Trump issue goes. Again, it would have. I think if Donald Trump was in those shoes, that definitely would have come up. But it was just right there, and he left it alone.
Yeah, there is that aspect of attacking the child, but I think the reality is, for people who have really followed the story, Joe Biden has definitely been he's definitely benefited from those relationships, and there have been rumors that Joe Biden controls a larger amount of finances than the Clinton Foundation does through some of these backdoor deals that he's set Hunter up in. And I think a lot of these people don't really get to keep the money. I mean, they benefit from it, they use it, but yeah, sometimes I think about the professional athletes and the glamorous actors and actresses. I'm not sure that they really control that much of their fortunes. I think that they're given a comfortable place to live and good food to eat, and they're well cared for, and they're kind of like well-stabled racehorses. And so I think that Hunter, I don't really think that Hunter has a bank account somewhere with billions of dollars in it. I think that there's some kind of a political organization or some kind of a trust somewhere that is drawn on by the Democratic Party. That's the rumor. Can't verify it.
I just did a search for Pence and Killshot, and there are people that are pointing out that they thought Pence had at least 3 of them that were qualified as a Killshot, and the one that I mentioned was one of them, and the other 2 had to do with, well, this line about you're entitled to your opinion but not your own facts. They perceived that as a kill shot, and also the kill shot so-called was bringing up the idea of President Trump being the subject of a coup for 4 years. So that he had a pithy way of putting that too. So
yeah, right. It was in his own style.
Yeah, in a very calm style, and that's what people remarked, is that he's so calm as he goes for the kill shot.
Oh, he very calmly broke the rules, which I thought was charming, actually, because he didn't break roll either. He just kept going like nothing was wrong, and kept doing it. It was almost like the opposite of Trump, but still doing the same thing.
Oh yeah, the other one was about packing the court, and Terrace had no response.
Oh yeah.
No, I don't really think that was. I don't think that was a win for him, because she did not acknowledge it at all, really. And what was she going to do? Admit, yeah, we're going to add 3 more Supreme Court justices if we get elected? She didn't do it.
Yeah, but what his response was actually the kill shot, not just the question, but his response was where he talks to the audience and he says, if you didn't learn by now, you now know that is what they will plan to do, that they plan to pack the court.
I think Kamala improved a lot. I think she had a lot of image coaching going on, and I don't know. I'm a little worried about her being, getting to be more effective as a communicator all of a sudden. I think that's the wake up call. Is she's improved a lot since the primary.
Well, yeah, but it's the warmth factor that she just does not have it. And President Trump can be effective and aggressive and warm at the same time. When she's aggressive, she's not warm. Yeah, unlike Trump.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. And that was when she's talking about the pandemic, and then she's cracking up. Kamala's got two things going on here. She's either got this silly grin going when Pence is talking, or she's just shaking her head like her son just came in from playing with mud pies. Just like shaking her head.
Yeah.
Like, what did you do to yourself? That was it. But it was completely incongruous with the material. It was just this constant. If you didn't even listen to what she was saying, that was how she was coached, is to either shake your head or look like a disgusted mother. And and Kamala, please, don't do the lost cat routine this time, which she didn't.
Well, and that handshakes with how Biden was with Trump. He kept laughing at him and calling him a clown. Trump would just start to talk.
Don't look at him. Yes, right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of tactical coaching, and then we're gonna. The wrap-up smear was the fly. Oh, and in parting, I would say the fly, ESFP, as most insects are, with no shadow functions. Just the basic hardware of a brain.
To the curious, the seekers, and the experts, thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Poli-Psych Podcast. We hope that you have enjoyed this episode. If you have, we ask that you please click like, subscribe to us on YouTube, subscribe to us on BitChute just in case. It is no longer possible to follow us on Twitter because we've been suspended, but we do ask that on our behalf you tweet our show link. If you have a moment, we invite you to visit our website. Once again, thanks for joining us, and until next time, take care.